Hello, I'm making this video for reasons I myself am not even too clear about. Uh, One thing is, I feel somewhat stifled because I can find almost nobody around me whom I can converse in English with. So I, somewhat poignant, I have to resort to speaking to myself in front of a camera. Um, so I just plan to uh, continue doing this probably for quite some time so that at least I could have an avenue, uh, no matter how preposterous it is, an avenue to speak English so that it will not deteriorate and in fact it could be improved. Uh, Definitely one thing is the way I speak English is far perfect. It's far from very far away from how a native speaks English. So I wish to do that, and uh, so maybe I start by talking about why do I prefer English. Uh, one thing that is very sure is that uh, I don't prefer English because it is a superior language. It is not even clear uh, any particular language has more merits than others. Just not clear. The reasons why we treat English as so-called this holy grail, great language, international language, that almost every single country has made it compulsory to learn it. The reason we do so is is very circular. The reasoning is extremely circular. It is because lots of people are using this language, the majority, and therefore we need to learn that. And it is also because we learn that, and therefore it uh, accentuates, it continues to become an even more popular language. So this is really uh, just a virtuous cycle for the English language itself, and somewhat a vicious cycle for other languages. You might say, of course, you can argue, oh, English has things like tenses, talking about the time aspects, and has mood, things like that. Some other languages, for example, Chinese, obviously doesn't have any time aspect, the feature. But it's not clear if that is an that is a blatant advantage. It's not clear. But also, I would also want to debunk a delusion. Some people, the most farcical idea is this: people think that language is merely a mechanical tool for you to express your thoughts. So it's very straightforward. You first form a thought in your brain, and therefore now you are very logical, mechanical. You have a list of languages, you choose them and choose one, and now you can run like a machine. You convey all your thoughts in that particular language, and then it becomes an output. I think that is extremely delusional. uh, any person who has done some rudimentary introspection will know that your thoughts uh, are largely limited by your language. So it is not you forming a thought and therefore you convey by a language. It's largely the reverse. You learn a language, you have a set of vocabulary, a set of phrases, common phrases, and therefore your brain starts using those phrases, those vocabulary to concatenate, to form thoughts, to form logical chains. So that is so crucial because whatever language you learn, whatever language you learn, you end up forming thoughts uh, that are limited by those set of vocabulary. So I would posit that uh, English has a number of really crucial vocabulary that maybe other languages don't have. At least for myself, as a native Chinese speaker, I feel somewhat stifled when I wish to express a number of very crucial concepts, particularly those regarding more abstract thoughts. Uh, for example, words like epitome, words like epiphany, words like conundrum. I find it very hard to express those concepts in Chinese. So I feel if you're not used to English, you will be incapable to form some very crucial abstract thoughts regarding yeah, particularly it has a lot to do with high level philosophy, so that you can spot some blind spot regarding your mind, some biases of how you think and how people behave. So I definitely think English has a lot of vocabulary on that, and that's why if I stop using this language, I will be I will be start I will start to think very sloppily. That is something that I definitely want to avoid. So uh, so the reason I pick English, I prefer English, is not because it is a superior language by itself, but it is also uh, much more. It has some advantage. It is able to allow me to think and express some thoughts that other languages can't. So uh, that's why I prefer English. But also I think there is a third reason, which is way much more sinister. The reason I prefer English is exactly because my environment isn't uh, isn't an English speaking environment. That sounds very paradoxical. What does it even mean? Um, maybe it has some tendency to do with my personality. Uh, I would describe myself as somewhat anti-chameleon. So I always feel, not always, I didn't think like that when I was a teenager. Maybe for the past 10 years, I always felt a need to compensate things that my environment doesn't have. So uh, it is precisely people around me are speaking some really egregious English, I feel the need to stand out and be different. You can say that I want to counter them. I'm somewhat an asshole, or you could say that I want to be add diversity to the environment. But I also think that it is optimization is a vice. So the epitome of optimization is definitely to speak in your own native language. That is the ultimate optimization, because you are so used to it, you are not even deliberate, you're not even conscious when you speak and write in native language. I i try to diversify as much as possible. So you want to always do something you are not 100% comfortable with, so that you improve things like that. And um, and yeah, I think the easiest way to explain this is, I imagine, I if I were born as a Caucasian or a Westerner, I think the 30-year-old me would end up hating English, like how I dislike Mandarin or Chinese right now. And uh, that person, that version of me, the Caucasian me, uh, would end up trying to speak Mandarin, Chinese differently. So to be different from the environment, like how I intend to be different from my Chinese environment. So those are the three reasons. And um, I would also like to I would also like to explore why do I end up in this stifling situation, this conundrum, the conundrum of me wanting to speak this language and people around me don't have uh, any desire to actually speak this English. In fact, sometimes I stumble I stumble into some friends, some old friends on streets in the malls. I wish to just tell them, oh, I don't speak Mandarin anymore. I want to be an asshole like that. But they started with the first phrase in Chinese in Mandarin, so I feel I have this. So I tremble. I tremble to reply in English because that sounds just extremely rude. So I often succumb, and then afterwards I regret again. Mm, I feel this problem of mine is somewhat unique because most people don't find this problem because if yeah, particularly partly because most people optimize, you grew up in an area, you speak in that particular language as a native language, and you don't change anymore. You don't even intend to move to another region. Or even if some people intend to move to another region, let's say you are you are a Chinese, you move to America, and then you end up mingling with the Chinese community in the Chinatown again, and then you speak the same language again. So people normally don't face this problem, and why do I end up in this conundrum? uh mm, One thing that is very obvious is I am born in an extremely Chinese family. All my relatives, my parents are extremely proud of being extremely Chinese. They send me to Chinese schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and also in university I inadvertently ended up befriending lots of Chinese. Old habits die hard. uh, and and um, but even if I went to SMK schools, the problem wouldn't change much because the Malays are just very Malay. They don't really speak much English either. So in the entire country, in this country, Malaysia, there's only one very small fringy community, the so-called English educated, or the more pejorative way of describing them, the bananas community. Hits FM, people on Hits FM, I don't know, Ginny Boy, those kind of people would use English predominantly. I think that is a very small community, and unfortunately, I grew up having no opportunity to associate with them. So I end up in this conundrum. The Malay speak very Malay, and the Chinese speak Mandarin. So I don't have any intermediate area. But of course, it's important to explore why did I even develop some preference on English, because or some basic competency. Uh, One thing is I have to give quite a lot of credits to my university days. I particularly my law school, university, and also a club called Isaac. So these two places were the places where I was given the opportunity to really speak English a lot and um, develop some penchant penchant towards it. Um, and I practiced laws that I used to it. But one very poignant thing is lots of people I spoke in English with back then, particularly people in Isaac, uh, they all now end up speaking Mandarin. It's just very peculiar. Uh, um, for reasons I am not clear about. Uh, one theory is that back then they 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 were credulous, they were naive to use a language they were not good at, and now they become much more conscious, much wiser, and therefore now they know the importance of communication. So they they now speak in a language that they are much better with. But I postulate that the opposite might be true. The alternative explanation is back then they were audacious enough to try things that are extremely uncomfortable. They didn't care about mistakes and so on, and now they are somewhat contaminated by society, by biases, by conventional wisdom. They now refuse to make mistakes anymore. Okay, they optimize. So which one is true? Of course, I don't really know. I'm not them. Uh, so yeah, I end up in this odd situation. Mm, I of course I hope to have more chance uh, to speak in English. Fortunately, currently I'm tutoring some high school students from international schools, and I still have some limited opportunity to do so. Okay, so I hope to pontificate more tomorrow or maybe next week onwards. So see you again. Goodbye.